A friend of mine once said, "The root of all our disappointment is misplaced expectations." The question is, what should our expectations for life be? What does God promise when we sign up to follow Jesus? I remember several years ago I was preaching at a conference and my topic was a dream come true. And I talked about how God makes our dreams come true. I had lots of great Bible verses, things like Psalm 37:4, that as we delight in God, He'll give us the desires of our heart. I even had a really good story about how I'd always dreamed of going to Switzerland, and that in my very first ministry experience with God Conversations, God spoke to me and said, "I want you to go to Switzerland and minister there." I'm like, "Are you kidding? It's too good to be true." I said, "God, but I need an invitation and I need money." And within a week, I had both. And that dream came true. But then the next day at the conference, we had a panel, just an intimate conversation between the host and myself. And she began to ask quite personal questions. And she asked me this question. She said, "Well, how have you coped in your faith following God as a single person and you haven't had children?" And I said, "Well, and I guess I was really honest at that point. I said, well, that's one dream that didn't come true. It's something I always wanted. I always wanted to have my own family. I always dreamed about the white picket fence and how many children I would have. But it didn't come to pass. But God has still been good and God has still been faithful." Afterwards, a lady came running up to me and she gave me this enormous hug and she said, "Oh, thank you, Tanya, for being so honest, because not all of my dreams came true either." But then there was a second woman who came up and she was very disturbed by what I had said. She said, "Tanya, your dream can still come true. Maybe you could have foster children and God, you can still see that happen." And I said, "Well, no, not really, because I'm too old and I wanted to have my own children. That dream has died." But I thought about that conversation afterwards and what she said, and I thought, doesn't that illustrate the challenge that we have with these two twin truths? Because the truth is that God does have good plans for us. "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you." And He longs to give us the desires of our heart. And when we follow Him, we're going to see those things come to pass quite often in our hearts. But the other truth is that we also live in a fallen, broken world. Jesus Himself said in John 16 that you're going to have trouble in this world. And later on, He says that the sun shines on both the righteous and the unrighteous, but so does the rain fall. And when we sign up to follow Jesus, it doesn't mean that we get a golden ticket to everything that we want. Well, what did God promise us then? What should our expectation be? The truth that I have discovered through the years of following Jesus is that God loves to give us good gifts. He loves to fulfill our heart's desires, but He also calls us to learn the truths of the greater good that He can do in our hearts. And that when we follow Jesus, we'll discover the treasures of heaven. Truths like love and joy and peace, such that no matter what happens in our circumstances, whether our dreams come true as we imagine them to be, that we will know the joy of knowing God and the truth and the freedom that comes, these kingdom treasures, even above what we see around us. Can I encourage you to keep looking to the God who calls us to know Him first, who calls us to overcome, who calls us to learn contentment and joy and hope in spite of what's happening around us. Thanks for joining in with us today. For more on having your own God conversations, I encourage you to go to godconversations.com.